It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Monday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines, our Monday bonus podcast. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host in studio, John Riley, coming off a great sports weekend. This podcast belongs to you. We want you to be part of this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center stores. 9 locations to serve you, and the new one that's opening in Dana Point. You got projects in the home, in the place of work, or on the patio near the pool. Need materials? Want ideas? Think DIXIELINE Lumber. John Riley, it doesn't get any better than this. Pennant race, baby. NFL preseason about to end. Roster cuts, start of the season. Here comes college football this weekend. Yay.
Yay. we got the Little League World Series going on. I mean, there's just a lot going on right now, Lee, but this is a great time to be a sports fan, especially in baseball.
And on this podcast, we do talk about all the topics on the table. A couple of business items. I am trying to get to 10,000 followers. We had a ton of subscribers to our live stream. I want you, if you're on social media, I know you're on social media. Don't lie to me about social media. I want you to become a follower. I want you to join my team. Just type in my slug line at Hacksaw1090 and follow. We want you to push us over the mountain and over the top. When we're done with this podcast, just bring up X and hit I follow Hacksaw1090. By the way, you like sports? I write on this website every morning. It's there. You can't believe the volume of information. You can pick and choose, or if you give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you everything there is in the world of sports. Just go to the website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. Check it every morning. By the way, we can go to the website. Right on the front page, there's an orange box. Who wants to go have tequila with us? John wants to go have Mexican food. Maybe we should invite everybody who's part of Hacksaw's Insiders Group to a BYOB at some pub to celebrate what we've accomplished. But you can register to join Hacksaw's Insiders Group by filling out the orange box. Geez, maybe we can get John to buy a round for everybody.
Hey.
That's a lot of bread,
Yeah,
pal.
it is.
Anyhow, join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. And when we're done, you take over this podcast. John, explain to everybody how Fans Forum works for those in the States and those in the O Canada network.
Okay. If you're in O Canada, we got to change the rules. I don't know. So anyways, you got a question or comment on the rule of sports, drop your take in the live chat, Facebook, X, or YouTube, and we'll get you involved. In Fans Forum, it's always ahead.
Topics. We got topics on the table. We have to start with the pennant race. So here's the question. A little bit of a headache, a little bit of sore throat, a little bit of fatigue. Pennant race fever.
Fever. Okay.
That's why you're worn out. Watching these Padres in these 8th and 9th and 10th inning games, winning some, losing some, and then say, oh, how is this possible? I mean, that's topic one. Padres lose to Colorado. Please explain to me how you lose to a team that had a record of 45-79. How do you lose 8 of 13 to those guys? I don't know if it's a Bud Black curse, Bud Black karma. It's just absolutely stunning to me because Colorado, it's like a AAA baseball team with no pitching, and they beat the Padres 8 of 13. Tough game, though. They lose the game to the Rocks. They lose their shortstop. Hassan Kim undergoing an MRI as we speak. Sprained shoulder, maybe. I hope it's not a torn labrum. He went into that bag diving back on a pickoff attempt at first base. He went in hard, and the full momentum of his body was on that right arm as he reached the bag, and I saw the arm come back as the body went forward. I hope he did not tear a labrum, tear his rotator cuff. I hope it's not dislocated, but he could not move it. That's a tough sight to see. So we got that to talk about. Joe Musgrove takes another step back. 71-pitch outing. So far, so good. No setbacks physically. Obviously, Dylan Cease's last 2 outings have not quite been as dominant as they were before. Michael King continues to do well. A little concerned about overuse of the bullpen. I mean, when they went to get the left-hander from Miami, I thought that's quality. But, man, he pitched 5 times in 7 days. And he refuses to say, I need a day off. But there's a wear and tear factor there. So I would hope that Mike Schilt will get into a better rotation with the 7-man bullpen that he has. But he's gone to it an awful lot. So let's talk. Padres losing to the Rocks. Let's talk about the shortstop. You want to talk about the pitching staff? Go ahead, John. The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. There's a lot there. Yeah, I was talking about a fever. I'm thinking about I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. So as far as the Padres, it seems like the Rockies have always had their number.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes back historically. It's weird. Even back to the Matt Holliday didn't touch home plate controversy.
Still hasn't touched home plate either.
Exactly. And I remember there was a Players Weekend. Didn't he have like on the back of his jersey, like I didn't touch or something like as one of his nicknames? Yeah, that bastard. So, lose 2 or 3. We were expecting them to win all the time, and here they don't win, and it makes us feel like awkward now. But they won 8 series in a row going into this. You kind of have to give them a break. But Ha-Seong Kim, you could see that when he dove back to first, he instantly knew something was wrong and it was bad. I just from the look of it, I can't imagine he's going to come back, in a week or 2. It's probably going to be a serious injury.
Well, how long was Xander out with a shoulder injury? 7 weeks?
Yeah.
And this is his throwing shoulder. That's a big issue. Now, who plays shortstop? Does the X-Man go over there? Do you trust Solano to make enough plays consistently at shortstop? Do you put Cronenworth there? Because you're going to move some parts around here. If you move Xander back to his original position, Cronenworth goes to second. I assume you want Arise to stay at first. If you put Cronenworth at short, that's a whole – they haven't played that in a long time. If you put Solano at short, can he be equal to what Kim was defensively? There's no doubt that he's hit the ball better, but is he an everyday guy? I don't know about that.
There's no shortage of shortstops on this team, so they're going to have someone. Now, if I could wave a magic wand in this situation, and we're going to assume that Ha-Seong Kim is out for an extended period of time, I would put Xander at short, and then I would put Solano at second. And Cronenworth could play first and just have a Rise DH, and I think that'd be fine. The thing that I worry about, though, is that it was such a big thing when they moved Xander off of short to second to make room for Ha-Seong Kim. It's almost like starting a quarterback controversy. Who's the shortstop? So if it's only for a few days, then I think you let Wade play.
It's not going to be for a few days.
No, I don't think so.
That's the big issue to me. Okay, we go from Padre baseball, and if you're a Padre fan, do you have an explanation how this could happen, how the Padres could lose so many games, 8 of 13, the last place Rocks? Join us in Fans Forum. You can dial in right now with your question or your statement. We go from that to the next team we're talking about.
Yeah, talking about injuries, the Dodgers getting hit.
Boy, this thing never ends. We're talking about the Dodgers situation. And the Dodgers situation is they're still in first place. The positive news, Kershaw, 6 shutout innings over the weekend. Best outing I think he's had since they shut him way down. I have no explanation because he's not playing every day in the field. He's not pitching. His preparation is strictly to be the leadoff guy in DH. How is Ohtani, who's got 38 home runs, hitting 147 since June? 147. He's still a shade above 300 overall. 147.
Since June?
Since June.
It's like this has been going on for a month and a half or 2 months?
Month and a half.
This is amazing.
It is amazing. So that's a stunner. Yeah, he's still hitting rocket shots and 448-foot bombs. But a 147 batting average for him. Tyler Glasgow goes on the DL. Elbow inflammation. He's such a physical force guy. He's got a history of elbow problems going back not just to Tampa Bay, but prior to that, when he was a high draft pick of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and now he's broken down. Bobby Miller, boy, what a dreadful performance from him. And, of course, he pitched well at the end of last season. I think he had a 3.20 ERA when they needed him to pitch at the end of last pennant race. Started out well, hurt his shoulder. He has just not found it. He's not dialed in. In his last, let me get this correct, 22 innings, he has given up 32 hits, walked 13, That's 35 base runners in 22 innings, given up 7 bombs and thrown 5 wild pitches in 22 innings. He just can't find his mechanics. And now it's so critical. They're desperate for starting pitching. They got to give somebody the ball, and they keep giving him the ball, and he's really struggling badly. Who's not struggling is the guy they got from the White Sox. And what did your loudmouth co-host say last week?
Make him the closer.
Make Michael Kopech the closer,
right.
And Michael Kopech is now the closer.
They listen to you.
Back-to-back saves. He throws 1 inning at a time. How about these stats? In last 30 batters Michael Kopech has faced, 1 hit allowed, 13 strikeouts. Dude was clocked at 102 in the last inning of his last save. So now they got a closer, and they got Evan Phillip in front of him. They got Blake Trinan in front of him. They got Daniel Hudson in front of him. Now, those guys can be hot, can be cold, but it looks like it's Kopech's job at this point in time. And now to top it all off, Freddie Freeman. Ground ball, injures, finger on the glove hand. Can't play. Didn't break it. At least they don't think he did. But swelling got worse over the weekend, came back from St. Louis, was having x-rays, MRI today again. There's something wrong in that finger. I don't know if it's a tendon, if it's a ligament, or if maybe there's a chip fracture in there. Dodgers don't need more injuries. My God, it's just been a nightmare. And they're still in first place. I don't know how they're still in first place. I went back and I looked in the National League East. Atlanta is on the brink of falling into the crevice. They have so many injuries, and they just suffered another one, losing Austin Riley today with a fractured hand, after losing Ozzie Albies, after losing Ronald Acuna, after losing Mike Hill, and, of course, losing their ace of the staff, Spencer Strider.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all caught up to them. I mean, that is Atlanta lying face down in the gutter. They might not even make the playoffs now unless they somehow hold on and win the division. So you got that trauma in Atlanta, and the Dodgers are living through the worst mess of injuries to a pitching staff I've ever seen, and they're still in first place. And Dave Roberts has been able to hold this sucker together, and I guess organizationally you got to give him credit because they've got all these pitchers that they keep bringing up, and every one of them is broken down, and the Dodgers are not afraid to make trades. So, boy, these pennant races are weird. But this Dodger thing, I just keep wondering, when are they going to fall down? They haven't fallen yet.
You know, I would never wish any misfortune or illness on anyone. But the Dodgers, I might make an exception because when they are fully healthy, it's a juggernaut. Yeah. I mean, they're going to run away with it. So the fact that they're struggling is giving other teams a chance to compete. Now, obviously, we want to see these guys come back. But it's incredible, all these injuries. You know, we've been talking about the pitching, pandemic. But our position players, are they getting hurt at a higher rate than they have in the past?
No. They've just had 2 guys who are out for extended periods. I mean, Mookie Betts is now back. Max Muncy is going to be activated, I believe, for tonight's game. Tommy Edman might be activated for tonight's game. But they've had the number I had, I'm just trying to remember it. They've had, by virtue of what they just did today, they just called up another minor league pitcher. They will have had 36 different pitchers on the roster this season. They've gone through 12 different starting pitchers since June 1st. And if Daniel Campusano, could start, he's the minor leaguer they just brought up, that'd be 13 different starters in the rotation since June 1st. It's absolutely stunning, and they're still in first place. So,
well, let me ask you this, Lee. Given their injury situation and the way the Diamondbacks and Padres are surging right now, do you think the Dodgers are going to win the NL West?
I think the Dodgers got a problem.
Yeah.
Because they're running out of players, and more guys just keep getting hurt. Now, Arizona's got a problem. Just off the top of my head, Arizona just lost Ketel Marte for a second time, re-injured his ankle last night.
Oh, man.
Already without Christian Walker, their legitimate power hitter. He's been on the DL. He's got an oblique and was the third Arizona player just went down maybe on Friday with a significant injury. So suddenly they're losing guys out of their batting order, and that batting order has been pretty prolific. So suddenly Arizona's got some problems here. So that's where we are.
Wow.
What's your take on Ohtani?
I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me because the dude is crushing everything. I mean, have they figured out maybe a weakness? Is there like a zone in the quadrant there that he has the inability to hit the ball well? I don't know.
He said through his interpreter yesterday it's something mechanical.
Mechanical?
About his hitch or maybe his stride or maybe the location of the bat. But that's why you study video. But this sucker's been going on since the end of June. 147.
Well, what's interesting is that if you look at the batting mechanics of Shohei Ohtani and even Ichiro, they're a little bit different than for a lot of the American ball players. They kind of start the rotation of their hips a little bit earlier to kind of get more of that whipping action. And it makes you kind of wonder if hitting coaches in America would maybe struggle to help Shohei.
If I give you Dave Roberts' inside cell phone number, you want to call him and offer him that help?
Yeah, I'll say, hey, do you know who I am? I'm the co-host with Hacksaw. We got a solution for you.
But you have to identify yourself. Here's my driver's license. I'm a Giants fan. All right, so we got that to talk about. You're a Dodger fan. What stuns you most? That they haven't collapsed under the weight of all these injuries? Fans forum chat box is open. You have a solution to Ohtani. I mean, he still hits rocket shots and balls that go out of the stadium, but he's hitting 147. Dodger fans, join us on Fans Forum. Got another baseball topic here we're going to discuss.
Yeah, the notebook. Rule changes. I want to hear about this.
Oh, this is amazing. So baseball 2 years ago elected to make significant rule changes vis-a-vis the pace of the game. Mm-hmm. And I think the pitch clock, the ban on the shift, the adoption of the designated hitter in the National League, it's really speeded up the game. It's made it a better game, even though the union's protesting some of the things that have occurred. I'm not sure that I buy into the limitations on pickoff moves and all that. But now baseball has proposed, and I'll be the first to stand up, and then Tony Clark will come in the door here, and he'll stand with me. Baseball has proposed a rule that your starter has to go 6 innings. Has to go 6 innings.
That's dumb.
The only asterisk would be if he throws more than 100 pitches in the first 5 innings, he doesn't have to come out to the 6th. You could pull him then. If his team is trailing by 4 runs or more, you could pull him then. I don't understand this. To me, that's tampering way too much with the rule. To me, you're putting pitchers at risk. I mean, these guys are max effort guys, and you got guys like Musgrove coming off long stints on the DL, and you're going to have them mandated that they have to throw 6 innings unless they're getting their doors blown off. That to me is that's a bridge too far. That's a step too far for Major League Baseball. So that's topic 1 on baseball. Buy or disagree?
Oh, I agree with you. I disagree with the idea of this rule because it's just crazy. I mean, like, for example, there's a lot of times pitchers will get into a game and they're healthy, but they lose their mental confidence, and it's hard to get that back.
You get a guy that has a stressful second inning. You can't mandate he's got to stay out there and pitch into the 6th if he gets lit in the second.
Yeah, that's a stupid rule, and I think they've done a really good job of speeding up the game already. They don't need to turn the clock even further.
So anyhow, they're going to put this up for a vote in the offseason. Red Sox, this is weird. I mean, Boston's got a young pitching staff, and they got a lot of young players that have played really well since the second month of the season, but their pitchers are still thin. Red Sox have just signed Rich Hill, left-handed pitcher, 13 years in the major leagues, been unemployed all this year. He was with the Padres at the end of last season, came in a deadline deal with the Pirates, didn't pitch very well. They've signed Rich Hill. He's 44 years of age. He intentionally sat out until the trade deadline, and he's been working out and been throwing. He's had private showcases for some clubs. Red Sox just signed him. Now, back in the day, he was a responsible, solid, left-handed starter. He's 90 and 73 in his career, but not recently. But the Red Sox just signed 44-year-old Rich Hill. Texas, well, you talk about pitching trauma. Max Scherzer out again. Shoulder fatigue resurfaces again. This is 150,000 miles on that arm, and now he's probably gone for the rest of the season. Jake DeGrom, once a former unbelievable prospect with the Mets, who, of course, went to Texas as a free agent, he's fought a year and a half in rehab to come back. He has now been cleared to throw rehab assignments in the minor leagues, so he thinks he is back. And the last one is the White Sox. The White Sox, I believe, are 30-95 right now.
That's amazing.
You know, at the trade deadline, we had all this conversation about Garrett Crochet, their top pitcher, who was going to be traded, and the deal didn't get done. Well, digging around, this is what I uncovered. The Dodgers got really close to getting Crochet. At the last minute, the White Sox asked the Dodgers to take on the contract of veteran outfielder Andrew Benintendi. Once upon a time, pretty good ball player.
Yeah.
But he's owed 3 years, $45 million.
Wow.
So they asked the Dodgers, we'll send you Crochet for the front of your starting rotation. We want you to take Benintendi off our payroll. And we want Miguel Vargas. We want River Ryan, who at that point was a hot young pitcher at Oklahoma City. And we want your top minor league catcher, Dalton Rushing. Dodgers said absolutely not. The Dodgers said, we're not taking on $45 million. We're not going to give you all these top young prospects. So that's why the Crochet deal did not work. Dodgers turned around, hung up on Chicago, and they called area code, is it 303, Detroit? And they got Jack Flaherty instead at a much, much lower price. So that's why the Crochet deal never happened with the Dodgers. Why Crochet probably didn't go anywhere else either. So White Sox are asking for the moon. So those are baseball topics if you want to talk about the Red Sox and old men, Texas and alien pitchers, and the price tag on Crochet.
Yeah, just a couple of quick hits here. Rich Hill, I think, was really smart how he went about this because he wants to keep playing, and he figured that we're going to get to a situation where there's injuries all over the place, and they're going to be desperate, and that's what worked out for him. Rangers, I just checked. They're now 11 games out of the
No, they're
AL.
done.
They're done.
They've lost their whole bloody pitching staff.
Well,
And then Seager was hurt for a huge amount of the first third of the season on top of it.
But it seemed like it was just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that Texas was starting to come alive again and compete. I hadn't checked the standings in the AL West, but yeah, Scherzer out. That sucks. I mean, but they're done for the year. And the last comment on the White Sox, that Benintendi thing was an interesting little zinger in that deal. But if you're dealing with the Dodgers, yeah, ask for the moon. They've got all the money. Why not?
Yeah, but then we're not going to take on $45 million in a contract for a fringe outfielder where there's no place for the guy to play.
But you got to ask. It's all part of negotiation.
Okay, you're a baseball fan. Rule change. I am anointing you to join us on Fans Forum. You're going to be the head of the Rules Committee. Do you like this proposal? 6-inning rule for starting pitchers effective next season. That's a bridge too far. You're stepped way over the line. You're tampering too much with the game. I love the ban on the shift because that really impacted the game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the three batter rule for the guy coming out of the bullpen. I do like the pitch clock. I think everybody's adjusted to that. Okay, we go from that. Time to talk football.
Football. We got Chargers-Rams game. And what'd you think of this, Lee?
Battle of the bad backup quarterbacks.
Oh.
Holy cow. While the scoreboard tells you the Rams are 2-0, they play hard, they play fast. The scoreboard tells you the Bolts are 0-2, and they got a lot of work to do. However, I thought I saw some things that I thought were pretty decent. Easton Stick, who was miserable the first game, I'm not even competitive. And this is a guy who's in his 5th year in the league to play that badly in an exhibition game against backup players. Man, a week ago today, I thought, this guy's not even going to make the roster. Anyhow, he threw for 85. He added 22 yards on scrambles and runs. Yes, there was a pick. Yes, there was a bad fumble down at the 2-yard line. I think he's going to make the team, A, because of experience with this group, B, smart guy, C, athletic. I think you keep him as a backup, John, and you put special design packages if he has to play because Justin Herbert is hurt. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem comfortable in the pocket. Okay, if he has to go in, there's a design package in which you use rollouts. You run some RPO so he can run the football. So maybe there's a way they can keep him because he's big, he's young, he's healthy, he's a student of the game. He played really poorly. Maybe he doesn't perfectly fit what they're running with Greg Roman's pocket-built offense. But he's the best thing you got out there right now. I don't know what to tell you about Stetson Bennett. I mean, he put balls into coverages. He only had 1 interception this weekend after 4 the first weekend. He had 3 others that could have been picked the first weekend. He could have had 7 interceptions in the first game. He threw 5 into coverages that should have been picked. He could have had 6 picks this weekend. He's just wild arm. He operates much better scrambling, running, throwing the ball off motion. But, boy, I don't know if you can trust him. Now, I mean, the scoreboard says he threw for 212 this week after throwing for 244 last week. But this turnover thing is, to me, it's just a staggering amount. I think the Chargers found themselves a pretty good utility running back, this kid Kim Vidal. He ran for 49. He had 3 bursts, and he ran with toughness. And, of course, we haven't seen Gus Edwards, have not seen J.K. Dobbins yet. I think Vidal may have won himself a position. It's been easy for a year plus to critique last year's number 1, Quentin Johnston, and say, what is this guy going to be? For the first time, I saw him run precise routes, electric routes, double move routes, caught 1 pass in traffic, caught another one thrown over his head. He landed out of bounds, but it was a monstrous catch. Broke on a double move for what would have been a touchdown pass down the sidelines, and Easton Stick threw it into the seats instead. The kid really showed. It's the first time I've seen him actually play with discipline at center. So maybe they're working with Quentin Johnston to make this thing happen. Now, at the end of the day, the Bolts have now played 2 games that you and I have watched. They've not scored an offensive touchdown yet. 0 touchdowns in 8 quarters of football.
Oh my, that's awful.
23 possessions, 0 touchdowns. That is awful. Third down, life and death third downs, 8 for 28 on third downs. And this is against scrubs and backups, and guys are going to be working at Chipotle's in 2 weeks when the roster cuts occur. And a bunch of this has happened behind their number 1 offensive line with the 3 first-round draft picks. So the group is not playing very well. So that's where we are with the Chargers. Feel free to jump on board if you're a Charger fan. Better yet, in Los Angeles, if you're a Rams fan. And I'm not willing to cut Stetson Bennett. But, geez, if Matthew Stafford gets hurt, I don't know that you can trust Bennett to play in a regular season game against Pro Bowl corners and linebackers. I mean, he just forces the damn ball into so many things. Your turn. Charger jersey on the left, Rams jersey on the right.
Well, for the Chargers, I have questions for you because they had that other quarterback that came over from the XFL, right?
Luis Perez.
How did he do, in your opinion?
He was aggressive going down the field, but he was wild throwing the football. However, this afternoon, just before we came on, they cut Max Duggan.
Yes, that was my follow-up question.
He is gone. I think Perez makes the team as quarterback 3 on the developmental squad, and they'll try to grow him and develop him. Duggan, I just think, was too undersized to play at the NFL level. I don't know if he'll get picked up by anybody at this point. If the Chargers were to lose one of these quarterbacks, maybe they'd bring him back and put him back on developmental. But Perez has got a little bit more pro experience in the spring leagues. And obviously, he's really aggressive. I mean, he chucks that ball down the field, but he's also a little bit undersized. He had trouble in the pocket with people. He had to scramble out of trouble to try to find receivers, but they cut Duggan, so there's the answer on the question. And I think they stay with Easton Stick. Maybe you should give me Greg Roman's inside cell phone number. I'll call him and put a damn package in with RPOs, so if Stick has to play, he's more comfortable running what he does best.
Well, do you think maybe this is the reason why Easton Stick never went to a big-time Division I program? Because he went to, North Dakota or something?
Yep.
And so, he was a great quarterback in college, not shaming that, but he wasn't like a 5-star recruit.
No, but he developed into a 5-star quarterback at Division I AA.
But when you get to the NFL, boy, it's a whole other game.
Yeah.
And, even top-of-the-line Division I quarterbacks can't do well in the NFL.
A.K.A. Stetson Bennett.
That's a good example.
Yeah. And I'm not burying Stetson Bennett because he sat out all of last year to deal with mental health issues. But if I'm a Rams fan, I think I'd really be damn concerned if I have to play him the way he's played in preseason. I've never seen, and I did games for 17 years for the Chargers and Seahawks, and I saw some good quarterbacks and some really bad ones. I've never seen a guy throw into the kind of coverages he threw in, thought he could get it done, and could have had 5 more picked off in addition to the one that was picked in the end zone.
Well, who's your better backup quarterback then? Is it Bennett or is it Stick?
Well, right now I think it's Stick within the system because he's the better athlete. But Bennett's hardly played. And I would assume Bennett winds up on developmental this year because Jimmy Garoppolo is suspended for 2 games for a PED violation.
Jimmy
G. Now, he's worked out and he's had a good camp. He can't play until week 3 of the season. He will be the guy. The other thing with the Rams, they're a little bit concerned. Stafford tweaked his hamstring middle of last week, did not practice, came back, tried to practice or do a walkthrough on Sunday, could not practice again.
Really?
So now they got 2+ weeks here, so hopefully that hamstring thing is not going to be a major situation. Quarterbacks. All right, I just went through and I did a look-see at who's available. There's a guy that was in Washington. It was a starter that I like, Taylor Heineke. Started a bunch of games.
Yeah,
he went to Carolina last year, went to Atlanta. He just got about to get released. If he were available on the waiver wire, I think I'd take a look at him. If you decided that we've seen enough of Easton Stick, Heineke is there. Tyler Huntley, he played at Utah, really competitive guy. Played for the Baltimore Ravens when Lamar Jackson got hurt. Real competitive guy. He's in Cleveland right now. He's one of 3 quarterbacks with Deshaun Watson. One of them's going to disappear on the waiver wire. I'd look at Tyler Huntley. I like C.J. Beathard, who played for the 49ers, played in Jacksonville, but he's got a groin injury. That just happened. And the one that I completely forgot about, but the problem is he's got a lot of miles on him. He's not going to come play for the minimum. Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee Titans. He's the only, quote, veteran that's still unsigned. So if the Chargers wake up tomorrow morning and say, we've seen enough of Easton Stick, maybe we got to find somebody else, I'd make a call to Heineke and try to get him because I think he's going to get cut in Atlanta. And I saw enough of spurts from him in terms of leadership and ability to make plays down the field and not self-destruct. I'd take him over all these guys. Tannehill is intriguing, but he's not in anybody's camp, which means he's not game ready to play, even though he's a veteran and kind of an intellect and still pretty good athlete, but he's got a lot of miles on him. So your thoughts on the Rams, your thoughts on the Chargers?
Well, are we going to call Kaepernick? Or is that thing done?
That's done.
Okay.
It's too late in the game. He's been out of it 7 years. If this had happened back in February, would have made sense to me to bring him in and look at him through the OTAs and you get him cardiovascular ready and you get him ingrained in the playbook. But you don't do that a week and a half in front of the start of the NFL season.
Well, this is amazing because it's reminding me of the pitchers in Major League Baseball. There are just so few good ones. And the quarterbacks, the same thing. So, I mean, of that list, I think Heineke would be my 1 and Tannehill my 2 because Heineke looked pretty good, I think, for the Commanders. Was it a year or 2 ago?
Yeah.
But who's that other quarterback that I think he finished up with the 49ers last year when everyone else got hurt? Or maybe that was 2 years ago. Was it Josh Johnson? He went to
Josh Dobbs.
Was it Dobbs? Well, no, there's
Dobbs is the backup right now in San Francisco.
Okay, but was he remember the game where Brock Purdy in the playoffs against the Eagles and he hurt himself and Jimmy G was already hurt and they went to that 3rd string quarterback. And wasn't that the guy from USD? I think it's Josh Johnson, isn't it?
Josh Johnson is in Baltimore as hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, he's been on like 14 different teams.
Yeah, and he played this weekend. Now, this is veteran quarterback who's going to be probably your 2nd or 3rd, if he stays 2nd or 3rd. Historically, he's played in preseason, always got cut, and he used to be on developmental. He went 11 for 11 in his preseason game against the Ravens. But he's a journeyman with limitations. I mean, there's a reason he's been with, this is the 14th team, reason he's been on 13 other teams is doesn't make enough plays. So, but it's interesting you bring that name up. Heineke he's younger, he's more athletic, he's a firebrand as a leader. I think he's somebody's pretty decent backup quarterback, and I think he's going to get cut because they got Kirk Cousins and they got Penix. In Atlanta, so there's no place for him. So if his name shows up on the waiver, on the Chargers, on the waiver wire, I'd take a look at Heineke.
Well, what about that kid that went to Ohio U that's now playing for the BC Lions?
Yeah, that didn't work out. First game, you can't go in there on one day's practice. I guess he threw a bunch of interceptions for the BC Lions.
Oh, he did?
Nathan Rourke, yeah. He apologized after the game. He said, I thought I could come in here and just hit the floor running because he had been in NFL camps. He was in game shape, but that game is so different. But they got beat by Winnipeg in a CFL game that many thought was going to be maybe the game of the season. But he'll be okay. But he's not ready yet.
Okay, all right.
So that's going on the quarterbacks. One other football note here. Do you want to talk about this San Diego State situation? This is kind of really interesting.
Okay, well, we got the NFL notebook.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let's get to halftime. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to screw this up. Fire me, find me. I know it's my podcast. We have a format, and we follow it, and we get to halftime, and then we have the second half of this great award-winning podcast. And my notes are all screwed up here.
Well, look at all that writing.
Yeah, it's not very good either. I can't read it. We are at halftime. Our Monday bonus podcast is brought to you by these guys. His best friend. He introduced me to them. Now I'm a fan of theirs. John, DIXIELINE Lumber. Tell everybody on live stream who they are and what they can do.
You know, we've talked about how they've been in San Diego for over 100 years, providing lumber and building materials to help out contractors, help out homeowners. It's cool when you roll back the clock and you look at the history of San Diego and the way the military came here and the way all these homes have been built over the last century. And DIXIELINE Lumber was a big, big part of that. And they still got all the great stores in San Diego County, expanding to Orange County. But lumber, building materials, kitchen, bath, decking, they're the guys to go to.
You got a project? They've got the materials. And if you want ideas, talk to them. DIXIELINE Lumber. And a reminder, if you're on social media, and I know you're on social media, I want you to follow me.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the wise-ass way. Follow me on social media. My handle is @Hacksaw1090. When we're done with this podcast, you go to Twitter. X marks the spot. Type up my name @Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button so that way you'll be able to follow all the things I put up on Twitter, a.k.a. X. We also want you to share. Tell everybody what we're doing. Mondays at 1 p.m., Thursdays at 1 p.m. And we want you to subscribe. When you subscribe, you get the alerts for every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, which is quite often. And, of course, at the same time, we want you to become part of Hacksaw's Insiders Group. When you go to my website, there's an orange box right on the front page. Fill that out. You'll get all the alerts and all the kind of unique things. And that offer that I made that John would buy us all a shot of tequila at a bar, maybe the Insiders Group ought to get together for a Friday night drinking session. And when we're done, we got over 200 people here on live stream. When we're done, John, live stream becomes fans forum time.
Yeah, that's your chance to ask a question about the world of sports with the expert, with the pro, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. So just type in your question or comment in the live chat on Facebook, X, or YouTube, and we'll get you involved.
On we go. Let's go to the second half. NFL Notebook is upon us here. John, we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, look at these logos. Let's start with the Browns.
Cleveland Browns, the big story. Last week, the Browns announced they were prepared to put together a proposal to build a dome stadium 15 miles south of downtown Cleveland in the suburb community of Brook Park. They wanted Cuyahoga County and Brook Park to give them $1.2 billion in public financing. Whole deal is $2.4 billion. Everybody was excited. City of Cleveland has offered them something like $461 million of civic funds to renovate the current stadium they're in, right on the lakefront, which was the site of the old municipal stadium. The Browns, like the shiny new thing, Jim Haslam wants to go to Brook Park. Well, over the weekend, actually yesterday, Cuyahoga County, which controls all the purse strings, says, no, we're not giving you $1.2 billion. You're the NFL, you pay for it.
Yeah.
So the Brook Park thing kind of seems dead on arrival. So we got that. Raiders, Raider Nation, you got your starting quarterback, and I agree with this. And by the way, dude said last Thursday on the podcast he was going to wind up being the starting quarterback. We're talking about the situation with their new starting quarterback is going to be the guy who was in Jacksonville. And this guy has done some things in the league, but he's also thrown a ton of interceptions along the way.
The gunslinger.
Oh, yeah, the gunslinger. So that's a big story there. Gardner Minshew will be the starting quarterback. And the rationale is this, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Who do they play opening day? Bolts.
Oh, yeah.
Who do they play opening day? Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Jesse Minter's blitz package, Jim Harbaugh's persona. They want a veteran. Minshew has seen a lot during the course of his career. Does throw touchdowns, does move the ball, does throw interceptions, unbelievable number of fumbles, and has taken a lot of sacks. Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders. Minnesota, It's been a tough couple of weeks for Kevin O'Connell, injuries, etc. Problems in the secondary. They lost one of their draft picks before camp ever opened, who died in a terrible auto accident.
Oh.
Young kid, Kyrie Jackson, died. 3 others have been injured in camp, and they made a trade of one of their others. They just signed Pro Bowl cornerback Stephon Gilmore. Pretty good player. Now, some of that might be in the rearview mirror because he might be 34 years of age. But Gilmore has signed with Minnesota, played with the Bills, played with the Patriots, played with the Cowboys. That's a pretty good veteran insurance policy. Dallas. Do you think Jerry Jones has a lot of money in his checking account?
Oh, just a little.
Just a little. Jerry, he's got an issue. Unsigned. 3 weeks into camp, C.D. Lamb.
Still.
Wants $33 million a year. That's awful steep. And by the way, his quarterback, Dak Prescott, he wants $60 million a year. Now, how is Jerry going to handle that? Historically, they've always been able to deal with salary cap problems. They lead the world in salary cap issues. Then they lead the world in renegotiation structures down. But there's no way that he could pay C.D. Lamb $33 and Dak $60. And I like Dak Prescott. I think his career record is 73-41. But his postseason record is 2-5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're going to give him $60 million on a 2-5 postseason record. I don't know about that. So Jerry's got a problem there. Washington, they just named their starting quarterback. They are really impressed with what he did in his 2 starts for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, LSU. Now, he was a stud for Brian Kelly down in Baton Rouge. He's come in with command of the playbook, leadership in the huddle, stuff he's doing in the classroom and team meetings. Jaden Daniels, who was 12 of 15 in preseason for 122 yards.
Nice.
No mistakes at all. He's going to be the starter for the Washington Commanders. Pittsburgh, they got 2 quarterbacks. They don't have any quarterbacks. Steelers have been miserable. Pittsburgh has not scored an offensive touchdown in preseason either, John, and that's with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, Wilson missed the first game with a calf, came back. He played in slow motion in game 2. I think he only threw for 47 yards. It just didn't move the ball. And then they went back to Justin Fields, and he makes plays, and he runs all over the place, but he's highly, highly erratic throwing the ball down the field. So, Pittsburgh's got a bit of a problem. No problem in Denver. Did you see Bo Nix last night?
Yeah.
Holy cow. Mm-hmm. Bo Nix, 8 of 9 for 90 in the first quarter, touchdown. Denver just absolutely sledgehammered Green Bay. They have not named him the starter, but I'm sure they're going to name him the starter. Then they have a tough decision. Do they keep Jared Stidham as the backup or Zach Wilson? Wilson, the ex-Jet, has played pretty competitively in practices and the cameo appearances he's made. So that decision from Sean Payton is going to be really interesting. And it's quite a story in the Canadian Football League. We already addressed what happened with the British Columbia Lions. They just got the NFL quarterback, the kid, Nathan Rourke, who really struggled. He played on one day's practice. That didn't work. Montreal's playing Saskatchewan. I saw this. I couldn't believe it. Saskatchewan tries a long-distance field goal. Well, in Canada, you can return field goals. And in Canada, the end zone is 20 yards deep. Mm-hmm. So Montreal has a kick cover guy on the back line of the end zone, and the long-distance Saskatchewan field goal comes short. He catches it on the fly, shoots up the sidelines, cuts the middle field. 128-yard return. A 128-yard return of a failed field goal. Canada, you got to love it. The openness of the game. And the third item is this. We talked about this months ago. Chad Kelly. He's the nephew of Jim Kelly, the Hall of Fame Bills quarterback. He was a Canadian Football League MVP last season, led Toronto Argonauts 15-1. CFL got to the Grey Cup. He got suspended for 11 games, sexual harassment, all types of violation of a domestic issue with a girlfriend. He just asked for reinstatement. He got reinstated, but he agreed to what's called a last chance clause. Never heard this before. I'm surprised the Canadian Football League Union agreed to this. He had to do all his counseling before he could have the reinstatement hearing. They put a last chance clause into the conversation that he must continue to go to counseling through the entire season, do civic duties, etc. And if he so much as gets a ticket, his career in Canada is over. A lot of different opinions about this, but Chad Kelly is back with the Toronto Argonauts, and they really need him. So hopefully he's learned his lesson. John, pick a few topics off the table here, talking quarterbacks and salary caps and good games and bad games.
Well, I want to first talk about this Cleveland Browns stadium thing. Okay, in my opinion, this is the biggest racket going on in the economy in America right now, of how billionaire NFL owners or even NBA and Major League Baseball owners can get taxpayer dollars to build a building so they can make even more money. So when the Chargers were, trying to get the stadium deal going here, I was just really against it. I mean, I was against the Petco Park for that same reason, because I just think it's crap. But but the Charger vote, I never even got a chance to vote on it because I was in the county, not in the city, which is something else. But I'm happy that that city outside of Cleveland said, screw you, we're not going to give you anything.
It's Cuyahoga County that controls the purse strings. And they said, no, we're not giving Jim Haslam $1.2 billion, which is 50% of the cost. Haslam's going to pay the rest. Now, there's ways to finance stadiums as a partnership. That's what the Chargers had in front of them,
right,
that Spanos refused to go to the negotiating table. The city and the county had put money in. The NFL has what they call a G3 fund, which puts a third of the money in, and then the owner has to put money in. That was right there. Spanos refused to even sit at the table because his eyesight was on Los Angeles. But there are ways to finance stadiums. San Diego had for the first time ever. The Rams had a great scenario because they had city, county, and state funds in Missouri, and Stan Kroenke refused to go to the table. However, the NFL and Kroenke lost that lawsuit, and they had to pay almost $900 million in damages to St. Louis when they violated the financing meeting. Chargers, San Diego should have sued Spanos in the league like St. Louis did because the Chargers had their thing put together. And they never did because Kevin Faulkner was going to run for Congress or something and didn't want to stain his reputation and get involved in a spitting contest with the National Football League. So there are ways to finance stadiums. It's not a blank check any longer like it used to be.
Well, I want taxpayers to pay for a new podcast studio for us, right? I mean, we provide a service to the community. I mean, going down the list here. Raiders, Gardner Minshew. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. I'm for that.
Against the Blitz package. Opening day.
Against the Blitz package opening day. I like that call. I mean, talking about some of these other teams.
What's Jerry going to do with the money issue?
Jerry, I don't know. I mean, if you have $60 million tied up with your quarterback, 33 with CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that's getting close to half of your team budget, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know how sustainable it is. You got to get Brandon Ayuk in there to give a seminar on Econ 101 to explain how the checking account works because it doesn't all fit. One of the things I was thinking about as well is you knew it wasn't on your list with the Bears and Caleb Williams.
Oh, he's a player.
Oh, and just seeing the passes he made. Did you see that one where he was running left and threw across his body to Ozune, like down the field? And the pass was perfect. And it makes you realize that a lot of these other quarterbacks, like a Stetson Bennett, they could be a leader. And you're in playing college ball where the wide receivers can get away and you can kind of throw easy passes. You can't do that in the NFL. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be really special.
He was pretty dynamic. The two games that he's played, he's answered all the questions to me. And lost in all the conversation, and only NFL junkies would know this, and I happen to be one. You look at the Bears roster, and this is the first time in a long time, they got all kinds of wide receivers, all kinds of tight ends, led by Keenan Allen, the ex-Charger.
Yeah.
They got 3 running backs. They got a stud offensive line. And now you have the kid, Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And their defense kicks your butt. Chicago, to me, and we're going to do our NFL preview Labor Day weekend, Chicago, to me, looks like a really dangerous team that nobody's paying any attention to. And this kid quarterback has got a lot of weapons around him now.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. Hey, and finally, just to go back to the Canadian Football League thing, we were talking about the 118-yard...
128-yard return.
128-yard. But
remember, the field is 110.
Okay.
And he fielded it deep on the back line of the end zone, which is 20 more yards deep.
Well, where do they put the field goal? Is it in the back of the end zone or at the front of the end zone?
Back of the end zone.
Okay, so he caught it in the end zone.
It did not make
and it was
the
short.
Uprights, yes.
Okay, and then he ran it from the deep end zone to the other end zone.
128 yards.
That's
like
unbelievable.
He was lugging a piano in the last 20 yards or so. He was gassed. But I've never seen anything like that. But that's Canada.
But you can return. Well, didn't Cromartie run back at one of those when he was playing for the Chargers?
It's like 103 or something.
Yeah, so I guess it's legal to return a field goal if it's missed.
Right. If it's short.
Okay.
So, interesting story. Okay, we got that. One other football note here. By the way, you're an NFL fan? I know there's a lot of transplants from Cleveland wearing orange, barking in the dog pound. Feel free. Any football topic, just jump into Fans Forum, ask a question, make a statement. We got college football to talk about here.
Yeah, college football, and looks like the Aztecs being bold.
Yeah, this is really a bit of a surprise to me. San Diego State, it leaked out last night. It's now been fully reported. The Aztecs have named Danny O'Neill, 18-year-old freshman who left high school early to enroll at SDSU. He's their starter. He's from Indianapolis Central Catholic, two-time state champion, wiry kid, athlete, moves the pocket, really smart, and he's gotten progressively better and better. They went through the 15 practices in spring. I went to their spring scrimmage, and he looked overwhelmed with defenses. But he has gotten progressively better and better and better, and he is going to be the starting quarterback for the first game against Texas A&M Commerce, Division II school, on opening night. I guess it's August 31st. Now, I'm a little surprised they did that because A.J. Duffy had played at Florida State, started a couple games. Duffy's got much more experience in a true Division I program, and I was surprised they did it because weeks 2 and 3 of the season, they play Pac-12 teams.
Oh.
Play Cal and Oregon State.
Here we go.
But Danny O'Neill has obviously, I was told by somebody from within, has made great progress going ahead, and he's a leader. He just has command of the meeting room. He has command of the huddle, maybe a little bit different personality. So kind of looking forward to see how he does coming out of the gate and to see how much of a jump, because he was down here in the spring game, and I said, whoa, too much too soon. We expected too much too soon. And he obviously has made a jump up here in terms of running this offense, et cetera. I'll tell you this, and San Diego State's not getting a lot of conversation anywhere in the community, which is too bad. Just believe in Sean Lewis. I know his track record at Colorado, what he did at Kent State, what he did at Bowling Green, what he did at Syracuse. They're going to figure this thing out. And I look at their roster. I like their wide receiver core, and I think they got great depth in their running back room. So he's got some skilled people, and they got tight ends all over the place that they're going to throw to. So everybody around Danny O'Neill will be a playmaker. And now he's just they got to block for him. He's got to be able to handle blitzes and whatever else comes his way as an 18-year-old freshman. First freshman in the history of modern-day Aztec football to start a season. I've had other freshmen who've come off the bench when guys got hurt. Ryan Lindley is a prime example, who set all these school records there, but he was not a starter his freshman year. He got to play the middle of that first year when everybody else got hurt. So this is going to be fun to watch this kid. Danny O'Neill, freshman.
If you're A.J. Tuffy, you've got to be so pissed. I mean, you are a transfer from what it was, Florida State,
yes,
right? And you lost the job to a incoming freshman. That's got to be so frustrating for him because he probably figured he'd be the starter here. But, it's competition. But isn't Danny O'Neill was kind of like Sean Lewis's guy, right? Yep. And he was recruited to go to Colorado, then came to San Diego. So, yeah, I know, maybe, that was sort of the teacher's pet, maybe.
I don't know. A lot of conspiracy on this side of the table here. I think Duffy winds up playing.
Oh,
and
I'm
we'll
sure
just see how the kid does. You know what's happening in modern day football? Quarterback doesn't win the starting job. Transfer portal right now.
Exactly.
Well, I would hope Duffy doesn't do that. I hope he'd stick it out. And I'll tell you, I'm intrigued with the third quarterback, Javance Johnson out of the Bay Area. He's 6'4". He's been in the program a year and a half. That's a really good athlete, and I wouldn't be surprised to see he winds up playing some quarterback for San Diego State. So if you're an Aztec fan, friend, alum, hey, Fans Forum chat box is open. Feel free to jump on board. John, where do you want to go next?
Okay, we got to go to the high-speed sports wire. Here we go, Lee.
A couple of headlines here. Let's talk about some different things. English Premier League. They started on Friday, first full weekend. The big story is what's gone on off the field. The English Premier League. This rumor it's caught fire. The word is relegation. Manchester City, that's won all these titles in a row with the legendary players they have, is going to trial September 16th for 115 violations of the finance rules and laws of how you operate an English Premier League franchise. They are talking as a penalty if these guys are found guilty, and this court case has gone on for 4 years, and now it's going to trial. If they're found guilty, they're talking about relegating Manchester City out of the EPL, kick them down a level to the Championship League. This is the champions. This is like telling the Dodgers or the Yankees, you violated the salary cap, you're being sent to the International League or the Pacific Coast League. I mean, this is all they're talking about in England right now in the English Premier League, and this all starts on September 16th. San Diego Wave, congratulations. They're having a really wretched season. They fired their coach. There was a major lawsuit against the general manager for toxic workplace environment. They can't win games. They can't score goals. They kind of lost the edge in the community, and that's a bad time to do it because here comes the MLS. San Diego Wave has just hired Landon Donovan as the interim coach.
Nice. Landon
Donovan did a great job with the second division San Diego Loyal team that we had here for a couple of years before it went out of business with the MLS coming on board. Landon Donovan, obviously the all-time leading scorer, Team USA World Cup Soccer. Landon Donovan, great player, MLS. So he takes over the San Diego Wave, and he will be their interim coach the rest of the season. And I got to believe that maybe he's going to wind up being maybe the full-time head coach going forward. But he's got really good credentials. A lot of people really like him. I think he's a classy gentleman, and he's proved a lot. Third item, NASCAR. I'll tell you what, they got an issue. They just announced this morning that NASCAR is pulling the Busch Clash, which is the first event of the season. It's like an all-star show. They're taking it out of the L.A. Coliseum, where it had been for 3 years, and they're relocating it, and they're going to put it at one of the good old boy small tracks in South Carolina or North Carolina. We will have no NASCAR races out here in Southern California because Fontana's closed for renovation and the downsizing of the track, and now they've taken the Busch Clash out of the L.A. Coliseum, where it was pretty well received. It was gimmicky. It was weird, but it drew fans. But they've yanked it out of here, and they're taking it back and putting it on a short track in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, so I don't like that. And I don't know what you're doing this coming weekend, pal, but Sunday you ought to find it on your TV. Formula One, must-see TV as we start the second half of the F1 series. You got Team Red Bull with its controversial driver Max Verstappen. You got Mercedes, which suddenly has closed the gap, and now they're putting their drivers up front at the end of races, and Sir Lewis Hamilton is winning races in his final season with Mercedes. And then you got Team McLaren and the hot young controversial driver Lando Norris. Tell you what, F1 beginning this coming weekend, must-see TV. I think it's the Dutch Grand Prix in the Netherlands.
Nice. Got
to watch it. All of a sudden, we went from one team, Red Bull, dominating for 2 years, to all this trouble in their pits and on the track and in their headset with their driver. And now you got Sir Lewis Hamilton, what he's done at Mercedes, and here comes McLaren, just getting better and better week by week, and they've kind of figured out their whole setup. So, must-see TV for F1. John? Go ahead.
Well, the F1 thing is good because Verstappen was winning all the time.
Yeah.
And so now there's a little bit of competitive stuff. But the Premier League thing I want to talk about because, we're used to teams getting penalized for various reasons, and the pros are in college. And usually it's a fine or a suspension. But I imagine if you're a fan of Man City and you're thinking, okay, we're going to, our Saudi owners are going to take a financial hit. But you better darn well not move us and relegate us. I mean, that is like a blow beneath the belt for some of these fans.
The penalties, as they uncovered in this investigation, are really significant. They hid revenue streams. You're supposed to report all your sponsorships and everything. You're supposed to report the specifics of every player or management's contract. They failed to report some big airline that became a corporate sponsor, gave out gifts to players, gifts to ownership and management, free flights and all that. Yeah. They failed to report bonus clauses and, in essence, money under the table, sponsorship money given to players in addition to the big salaries and the transfer fees. It's pretty significant. I don't understand how Manchester City could think they could operate this way and not get caught. Last year, I think there were 2 teams that had minor violations about paperwork, and they got docked points. This is 115 violations over a 4-year window. Manchester City, holy cow, they'll be filing to play in the Major Indoor Soccer League next. I'm just shocked.
By the way, wouldn't it be cool if the United States was part of that relegation system, But I digress. The Man City thing is just, it's unbelievable to me that, that they could actually suffer this relegation. But in the end, I think, they've been so dominant for the last 4 years. I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, their star, Erling Haaland, we've talked about him. He scored 90 goals in his first 100 games in EPL history. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I was watching the game. Was it yesterday or Saturday when it was on? That dude, that Haaland guy, he's big. He's a lot bigger than I expected him to be.
He's so athletically gifted in terms of getting open and just unleashing shots. But think about that, 90 goals in his first 100 games. He's from Norway. What a great player. So this bears watching as we get to September. This trial is going to be bloody.
Well, I just keep thinking about Jim Rome, your old colleague. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah, they got caught trying to cheat. Okay, those are topics on the table. I think we've covered a lot of different things today. It's time for you to join us in what we call Fans Forum. You can join us in the chat room right now. Just fill out on the chat box. You got a question, you got a statement, can be about anything we talked about, or if there's something out there from left field, you can file a question because my co-host is in left field sometimes with his opinions. He'll know what you're saying. John, this podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 locations to serve you, and the new one, it's opening up in Dana Point. You got projects, they got materials, and they will give you ideas and help. DIXIELINE Lumber. Fans Forum, ready, set, go.
All right, let's go here to Casey, and this is about the Dodgers. The Dodgers, I think, have their closer in Mike Kopech. I was skeptical on him coming, but so far he's been great for the Dodgers bullpen and closed 2 games. I say ride with him forward as their closer and likely go with him the rest of the way closing.
I think so. Now the question is, how many fastballs does he have in that arm? His back-to-back, he was clocked over 100 miles an hour each of the last 2 appearances when he got the saves on the weekend. I think there's a little bit of concern about overuse. So that means that, they may go back and they'll go to one of the other closers to give Kopech a day off. But he's a former starter who had a high ERA. He was a 4 or 5 inning pitcher, threw the hell out of the ball, high earned run average in Detroit with the White Sox. But here in a very different defined role, he can pitch back-to-back days. Now, you don't want him throwing 51 fastballs over a 2-day period, so they'll have to monitor that. But he's been lights out ever since he got there. As I said, what was the stat I had? 13 innings pitched. He's allowed 1 hit. He struck out 30-some batters. It's an absolutely amazing stat.
Doesn't it blow you away how many pitchers can throw triple-digit?
Yeah.
I mean,
and most of them are on the disabled list, Tommy John surgery, too.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, back in the day, it was like Nolan Ryan and maybe J.R. Richard, and that was it. I mean, now there's all these guys throwing heat. It's incredible. So, Kopech is an interesting guy. I mean, because Phillips, he kind of came out of nowhere and became the closer. I didn't really. I never.
He'd been in Tampa Bay.
Is that where he came from? Okay.
So, good comment. Dave Roberts must have heard what I said, because I said on this podcast last week, give the ball to Kopech, let him be the guy. Next question, John.
Okay. All right, let's go to Chris, and he always likes to channel the Hacksaw Schick. Here we go. Saw, I've got a headline for you to pound into your classic Underwood manual typewriter. Stick a fork in Easton. Most ineffective backup in football. Also, take some calls on the ladies' line about Nick Cage playing our national treasure, John Madden.
Okay. Is Chris from the Raider Nation out of jail on bail? Is he a Raider fan calling us?
Could be. It's last name Curry.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to handle it differently because it's really late to get a veteran backup quarterback unless Taylor Heineke becomes available, because he's in camp, which means he's in NFL shape. Got a lot of experience, 2+ years with the Washington Commanders and what he's gone through in Atlanta. I might look at him. It's way too late in the game for Ryan Tannehill to show up. That's the big issue there, and who knows if he's in any type of football shape. It just takes time. But my alternative for Easton Stick, and he hasn't set the world on fire, is You can put in a special package to run the offense if he has to play because Justin Herbert's hurt, and a special package devised to let him do what he does best, which is move the pocket and run pass option, because he has done that in the league. His only problem is he's not been able to get the team in the end zone. He was 0-4 as a starter at the end of last season when he had to replace Herbert, and they just really struggled to score touchdowns. So I don't think they're going to release Stick unless Heineke becomes available, and we'll find out as roster cuts come a week from now.
It's got to be tough, to be a backup quarterback. You're on the bubble, and then you're probably pressing in the game, and then it doesn't work out. I mean, he's got to be, pretty nervous right now, I would say. Stick.
I sit there and watch him, though. He's a fifth-year player. He's been in the pro ranks 4 years as a backup. So it's not like this is the first time he's ever faced live fire action. I can understand how freaked out Stetson Bennett is because he sat all of last year while he dealt with the mental health issues. He didn't throw a football in practice on a backfield in Georgia. So he's back trying to get up to speed, and he's doing it against rookies. But if you're asking me, I'd take Stick over Stetson Bennett at this point in time, only just based on experience. Now, you have to change the offense a little bit to play to his strength, but that's where they're going to go. And, if the Matthew Stafford hamstring injury with the Rams is significant and they got to play Bennett in the first two games because of the Jimmy Garoppolo suspension, the Rams got a problem because Bennett's not ready to play.
And not every team has Steve Young backing up Joe Montana, I guess.
You got that right.
Okay. But you're not going to say anything about Nicolas Cage and John Madden?
I want to see what the set design looks like. We're talking about the biography they're going to do on John Madden. But when they dye his hair and he puts weight on, and then we'll see if he develops the mannerisms of John Madden, it'll be fascinating to see. Anything's possible. Movies are great, and there's a lot of theatrical unique things that happen when you take an actor that and you put him in a very different role. It's the makeup and how his mannerisms, do they match John Madden? It's good. That'll be fun when we get there.
I really like Nick Cage on some of the movies he's been in, like Peggy Sue Got Married, was Raising Arizona, and all those ones about stealing the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. He's good, but I can't picture him as John Madden. That just doesn't fit for me.
Well, but you give him gray hair, and you make him loud, and you put some weight on to actually look like Madden. Anything's possible.
Okay.
It's Hollywood. It's the movies.
All right.
Next question.
Okay, let's go here to John, talk a little Chargers. He says, if the Chargers need a quarterback, they need to call Atlanta. With Cousins and Penix on the roster, Tyler Heineke is going to be available. Heineke put a scare in Tom Brady when he was with Washington. He
did. I followed the kid. The kid played at 1AA football, Old Dominion. And he got progressively better and better, and he wound up being a starting quarterback because of injuries and because of the mess that the Washington Redskin Commanders became. He's competitive. He's a little bit fiery. I do think he's an intellectual leader, and he'd be my first pick if he goes on waivers. And then we'll see if the Chargers would pick up. They're going to need somebody. This Herbert foot injury, there's no guarantee he's on a practice field this week. There's no guarantee that he doesn't have a setback when he gets on the practice field as they begin the game prep for the first game of the regular season. A week from today, they're going to be in game prep mode. They do now. Grant you, they do have a 2.5-week window here to get him on the field, but there's no guarantee he does not have a setback because those plantar fasciitis arch injuries, they can take a longer time to heal. So they got to be concerned about that. I like Heineke.
Well, how about one of the quarterbacks from Denver? Because one of those guys is going to fall out, right? Either Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, and some of that's going to be salary cap related because Stidham has a higher cap figure than Zach Wilson. Zach does not have guaranteed money. Stidham does. Stidham's a journeyman. He's played marginally. He hasn't played as well as when he started as Heineke has in Washington. That's why I like Heineke at this point in time. But again, we're talking backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, I don't know that you can trust him. When I saw Zach Wilson at the tail end of last year, I was kind of aghast at how really poor he was in his reads and how late he was making passes and throwing into coverages and just being late getting the ball there. And this is not a rookie. This is a guy that was a third-year guy with the Jets, and I just said, that's it. Enough is enough. So,
what was the deal? He was dating his ex-girlfriend's mom, I think, for a while.
You read that stuff on the social page. I'm reading the sports page. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, John.
Let's go here to Gary, talk Padres here. Part of the puzzle is having the capable Solanos, Peraltas, Wades to step right in and produce. Double-edged sword having athletes like Kim giving their all to make a play and finally injuring themselves. It's a long season and things are bound to go wrong a few games. Funny with the Rockies, maybe Bud Black. We are in such a roll right now. Tatis will be back, and I think we are fine and stacked, and our best baseball's ahead of us.
Could be. We got 7 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, 40-plus games to go in the season. Don't know any timeline on Tatis. They're being very cautious with El Nino just because, he's not running. You can stand in a cage and just take a stride and swing a bat, and you can stand out in front of the dugout and do soft toss. But he's not doing any heavy-duty baseball-related stuff because they don't want to have the stress reaction fracture in the thigh bone happen again. It takes so long to heal. So that they say they think he'll be back in September, but we're 10 days out or so from September 1st. So we'll see how much they're going to get out of him, and he can't have any setbacks when he gets ready to high octane it and actually start to do the baseball things he needs to do.
Yeah, that's going to take time, and you can't rush it. But, I think Gary brings up a good point. We have all these capable pieces. Hasn't Solano been just a find?
Yeah.
It's been so good, and he makes the plays at third base. I think he's serviceable at second base. Fortunately, the Padres have depth, and I think they can make this work for them. And, we love Ha-Seong Kim. We do, but he hasn't been hitting as well as he's been hitting previously. He's making a few more errors than we normally expect. So maybe this might have a silver lining to it.
Well, he's hurt. Yeah. And I think it's significant. Now, I hope it's not a torn labrum. I hope it's not a dislocation. But I think he's going to be out a chunk of time. I also think this might be the finest work of General Manager A.J. Preller. Not just the blockbuster trades and all the controversy about trading the whole farm system away. His acquisitions of role guys is just huge. They would not be where they are right now within a stone's throw of the first-place Dodgers. They're 3 back. It wouldn't be there right now had it not been for Peralta, had it not been for Higashioka, the catcher, had it not been, obviously, for Solano. And then some of the unique pitchers that he's brought in. So I think this might be his best year as an executive in Major League Baseball. That's about time.
It is about time. But, it's funny. The people on Instagram responding to your videos, they're saying, what the heck? Hacksaw, you were tearing down the Padres. You're saying they needed to sell, fire A.J. Preller, and now you're praising him.
Well, he was on the hot seat when the opening day started. What was the storyline around Major League Baseball? Who's in trouble? Well, his name always came up. But new ownership, he got the job done. Dude's got them within 3 games of first place. We'll see if we can get to September and then get to October and play meaningful games. Think this town would go crazy if this thing's wound up in the World Series because the Dodgers finally crumbled under the weight of all these injuries?
Anything's possible, and it's kind of feeling a good vibe right now.
Okay, on we go. Next question, fans forum.
Okay, let's go here to Raul. He goes, I'm shocked that the Dodgers are still in first place. Let's see what the season holds for all of us.
Yeah, we still got, as I say, 6 or 7 weeks. Dodgers are getting their guys back healthy, but now they got Freddie Freeman hurt. And if he's got tendon or ligament damage in that injured finger, Raul, they got a problem. Because that's a big bat and a leader that you're going to have to replace. The other problem is somebody needs to figure out Ohtani. How does that guy hit 147 since the end of June? Yeah, he's hitting home runs, but 147 is absolutely stunning. But there's a lot of baseball to be played. My goodness, the last 6 games of the season, you think people are going to be going crazy?
Yeah.
Dodgers at Arizona. I should say Padres at Arizona. Dodgers hosting San Diego at the end.
It's going to be great. This is all setting up terrifically.
And right before we get to that last weekend, the last 6, Dodgers got to go to Arizona to play the D-backs before they face the Padres.
Yeah, so it's going to be awesome. There's been those moments where there was a legit pennant race for that last week of the season. It's always so thrilling. Now, they since changed it so the last game, everybody starts at the same time. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good thing, right?
Yep. it's a lot of baseball to be played, and there are going to be a lot of meaningful games during that course of period. Raul, thanks for joining us on Fans Forum. Next question.
Okay, let's get some football folks in here. And Derek says, the NFL did not give Rourke a fair shot, and neither did BC for sending him out after 2 days of practice.
Well, their quarterback up there, Vernon, you asked me too quick. Not Garcia. The starting quarterback up there, who's been around the league, is very successful. He went down, I think it was with a knee injury. So they had to make an emergency call, and Rourke had just gotten cut. Rourke knows the playbook, knows the coaches. He came in, but on one day's practice, he's not ready to play in terms of timing, and he really scuffled and struggled, and Winnipeg ambushed him. But I do think Nathan Rourke's he'll get better and better collectively, and pretty quickly, too, because I think his game is made to play in the Canadian League. And when you say he never got a chance, well, he's a CFL quarterback who's a little bit undersized. His game is run and throw. They don't do that a lot in the NFL. And, he went, where was he? He was in Jacksonville. Well, they're paying all the money to Trevor Lawrence. He's not going to play in Jacksonville. And he was the third QB in Jacksonville. He went to the Giants. Well, they got Daniel Jones, and they got the Italian stallion there, Tommy DeVito. And he went to Atlanta, but there's Kirk Cousins at the front of the line. They drafted Michael Penix, so he doesn't get much of an opportunity there. So he gets cut. I thought he'd probably be on somebody's developmental squad for a third year in a row, but he goes back to Canada. I hope it works. And I root for the kid because he's one of us. He went where I went, Ohio University. He's a Bobcat.
Remember the time that Baker Mayfield rolled in and picked up the playbook and played like the 2 days later and won?
Yeah. Well, Josh Jobs last year in Minnesota, journeyman. Mm-hmm. Josh Jobs goes to Minnesota, had 2 practices and led them to a shocking upset win.
That's incredible when you see these stories.
But after a while, defensive coordinators will figure out. They'll catch up to what you're doing, John.
Now, let me ask you this. In a pretend world, would you rather have Rourke or Stick?
Oh, Stick, much bigger athlete, much better athlete. Both were great college quarterbacks, but again, Stick's got his limitations, and Rourke never got a chance to play in the NFL, really. We move on.
Let's go to Force Ghost Fabio. He says, no public funds should ever be used to build stadiums. We have homeless Americans, and money is wasted on sports.
Well, that's a bit of a reach, Fabio. I mean, sports brings a lot to your community, the economics of a community. I understand the public stance. Mr. Capitalist over here saying, no more money for Richmond. We're not giving Dean Spanos any of our money, or Kroenke or whatever, although Kroenke paid for SoFi Stadium out of his own checking account.
Good.
But at the end of the day, having a franchise has great value to your community from a financial standpoint, and I think from an emotional standpoint. John, I swear to you, this community, despite the greatness of the Padres, this community emotionally is not the same since the Chargers left this community. So I think you need to work in partnership with owners, but the owners got to pay their share of the freight, and the NFL has the G3 plan that's supposed to be put in place. But to ask Cuyahoga County for $1.2 billion, so they pay half of the $2.4 billion Dome Stadium for Haslam, that's kind of far-fetched.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big ask. I mean, because if they did it in a property tax increase, I mean, it could be costing everybody a few $100 a year.
And not everybody's an NFL fan. Exactly. It gives a damn. I'll just ask what's going on at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. So now one other interesting angle to this is that they were talking about building a dome stadium.
Right.
And obviously you think about the mistake on the lake and the Lake Erie and the snow and the weather, and that sort of has a little romantic angle to it as an old football guy. But now stadiums are like these Taj Mahal for rich people with beautiful food and women and drinks, and it's like a Vegas casino.
But the other aspect is a dome stadium in Cleveland puts it in the running for a Final Four. Puts it in the running for NCAA football playoff championship games. It becomes a year-long venue for a lot of really special events. It's just not the home of the Dog Pound and the Browns.
Right. Yeah, that sounds interesting to me.
Okay, we move on.
Okay, let's go down the list here. Let's go to Steve. He says, when will the Chargers cut Stick? He's trash.
Well, at this point, it depends who you can go get and how quickly you can integrate him into the system. And the fact that he is experienced and the fact that he knows this organization. And now, granted, he's scuffling and struggling with the pocket package that Greg Roman has kind of implemented because Herbert's going to be a pocket quarterback and Stick is a move of pocket and can run some RPO, run pass option stuff there. But you got to be able to get the right guy to come in. If Heineke becomes available, then injuries change everything. You could lose your backup quarterback this weekend, and Heineke has value to the Atlanta Falcons. I would take Heineke just because of leadership and intellect and the fact that he started a ton of games for a bad Washington team. He took so many quarterback sacks in a bad situation, but he comes to work every time. So we'll just have to see what, and the cuts start coming next after they play the final preseason game next weekend. By Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of next week, everybody goes from 90 down to 50, 53, and then you bring your developmental squad back.
Wow. You know what? I screwed up. I meant to click on this other comment from Steve because we've been talking a lot about Easton Stick already.
Go ahead.
And let's go here. And he says, what do you think of USC going at least 500 in the new conference?
It's going to be a challenge. But I tell you, they do believe this quarterback, sixth-year guy, got a lot of experience. It's like a whole new football team, and they had to replace virtually all their wide receivers, although they do get Zachariah Branch back, and he's a stud, big, long, rangy wide receiver. They're 3 deep at running back. We'll see if the defense takes a monster step forward with Danton Lynn, who they stole from UCLA to become their new defensive coordinator. I'll be fascinated, but, they like UCLA. They got a lot of travel. I mean, they got a lot of time on airplanes going back and forth. So Lincoln Riley's he's kind of being challenged by a lot of people nationally that you haven't done a good job. Well, 18-6 over 2 years, and last year was a mess because of injuries, and the defensive coordinator and Caleb Williams had to do it all by himself. I think they have a good season because they got great athletes, and they do have a lot of transfers coming in. Just we'll see if they hit the floor running. I think they'll have a better season than UCLA is going to have. I think it's going to be a miserable season for UCLA. With even though people like Deshaun Foster, he's got a quarterback that's hardly ever played, and he's got to replace a lot of people on the defense. I think Oregon is the best in the group that's going to the new conference, but they got a sixth-year quarterback who transferred in, Dylan Gabriel, and all he's done every place he's played is just toss the ball all over the place. So I think Oregon's going to be dangerous. Washington, massive rebuild. So that's they hired the coach from the University of Arizona, Jed Fish. That's a massive rebuild because Penix and Odunzie and the tight end and the running backs are all gone. So Washington's I think that's going to be a tough season for them. So Oregon's going to be the best of the groups that are going.
Yeah, I saw Oregon rank 3 in one of the preseason rankings. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel, I remember he was at Oklahoma, and he was the one that took over when Caleb Williams left.
Yeah,
and he
went from Central Florida, was supposed to go to UCLA, and then turned at the stoplight and went to Oklahoma, and then he's transferred out again.
Interesting. Now, other people have been saying that Oregon has this really great recruit at quarterback, but is that the kid that was at UCLA last year?
Yes.
And
he's a quarterback in waiting.
It was what's his name? Dante something, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's cool that Oregon's going to be competitive in the big 18 or whatever we're going to call it. But is USC playing on the road at Ohio State or Michigan?
I don't have it right in front of me. We could go find it.
That'll be the game to watch.
Yeah. These guys, UCLA, and USC have both got really tough schedules. Some of them at home, a bunch of them on the road. But we'll talk about that in the next week or so.
Okay.
All right. A couple more here.
Let's go to Neil here. And this is kind of the talking about running back the failed field goals. And he says, was it Crow, Marty, or that other corner out of Auburn? Remember that Auburn, Alabama one about 10 years ago?
Yeah. Cromartie's the one that had all kinds of problems off the field. And Cromartie came in here as kind of a gem, and they found him, and he was going to be a star. And he made some plays on the field, but there was so much problems. And then he got hurt. He kept getting hurt all the time. And there were so many problems off the field. He had so many kids out of wedlock. I think he had 7 or 8. It was really bad. And there was one interview. I was out at the Fortress. That's what I called it, Charger Park, because they try to control the media. And somebody asked him a question. Antonio, can you name all your kids?
Whoa, hey, don't go there.
End of press conference. That was that. But they got tired of the act. They got tired of the fact he was always hurt. He wound up with a degenerative hip thing. He went to the Jets, and he made some plays, but he couldn't stay on the field. And then he had a knee injury, and then he retired. So,
I remember it was something like 8 children and 7 mothers or something. It was just really messy.
Baby mamas everywhere.
Yeah, it was very complicated. But the things I remember about Cromartie is I remember, that run back from the missed field goal. I remember him being a stud athlete, but I think it was the Chargers-Jets game, the one that Nate Kading kept missing all the field goals. And there was a time when one of the Jets runners was coming into the second level, and Cromartie did like an ole, to let the runner go by. Do you remember that? That was a long time ago.
He didn't put his head in there to make tackles either. He might have been a good athlete who could run, he'd pick off balls and all that, but he would not lay the leather on anybody.
Yeah, well, bringing up, Neil's bringing up that Auburn one. That was one of the most amazing plays, I think, in college football I think I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to let's go here to Emmanuel. And he says, can't wait for college football to start. This will be the first time I actually do see Big Ten games since both USC and UCLA are now part of the league.
Well, big arguments back in the Big Ten. It is Michigan and it is Ohio State. Penn State's really good. They got a third-year starting quarterback who's back. The rest of the conference is not what it used to be. That's going to be an issue. But you could be USC and UCLA coming in, but you might only be the 4th or 5th best team in what is historically a really good conference. I mean, USC is right there in the mix. I mean, they're going to be upper echelon, but whether they're as good as Ohio State or as good as Michigan, though Michigan's replacing a bunch of people, that's a big question. UCLA, they were picked 15th in the conference. I mean, they're going to be the doormat for a lot of people. Oregon is obviously going to be upper echelon. Washington is not. So love the start of college football, but right now that conference is driven by Ohio State, and Michigan always has, probably always will be. But here comes Oregon, and we'll see how different USC is, because they have to replace a lot of people.
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Like, Greg has an interesting follow-up question on this with a twist. He says, Lee, is Lincoln Riley at USC on the hot seat this year? And then, any chance you go 3 days live on the podcast?
We're working awful hard right now. It's just not that we show up and do this kind of off the cuff. There's a lot of research that goes into the topics. And by the way, I write a lot on that award-winning website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com, which you should read. You find out the volume of information that I create and I write. And there's a few damn typos in there because I don't have enough hours in the day to spell check everything, but the volume of information. So I do work at it. We've talked about other ideas, but we got some other things might unhatch as we go. But 2 days right now is pretty good, and it does test the host a lot.
Well, the 2-day-a-week thing, I think we have a nicer rhythm going right now, right? And
despite your shortcomings from left field, yes.
Yeah, despite that, but the way we release the videos like throughout the week in between each of the live streams, I think is helpful. But I think people are just used to having you Monday through Friday from 3 to 7. Right? Or was it 4 to 8? What was the drive time?
Hell, when I first got here, it was 6 to 10, I think, and then they kept moving me up into drive time, and then they put me in the mornings. Mm-hmm. You imagine me in the morning waking you up, yelling at you.
No, you are drive home from work time guy, and that's when I remember listening to you in the beginning, and it was fabulous.
Yeah. Hey, we got a couple social medias here you want to throw at us?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go check out some social media. And hey, how about talking Raiders? We got to get some Raider comments in here. This is from Joey. He says, unfortunately for the Raiders, it's going to be another bad season. I predict 7-10 at best. We have no quarterback. Hopefully, I think that's Mark Davis, doesn't fire Antonio Pierce before we get a good quarterback. We will see. It's so hard being a Raider fan.
Joey, I'll agree with bits and pieces. I mean, Minshew can play. Now, they think they've really upgraded their offensive line, which has been a sieve. It's been a leaky part of their roster the last couple of years. So let's see if they can protect him. My question is, who's going to run the ball? I mean, they do have Zamir White, second-year kid out of Georgia, who was a power back, who had some big runs at the end of last season. But can he actually replace Josh Jacobs, who went to Green Bay? That's a question. Love the core of wide receivers. Love the tight ends. I do think offensively, with Luke Getsy, they're going to move the football. Defensively, Christian Wilkins' arrival just makes that front much better. I think if the front is better, that allows the linebackers to do a lot of stuff. I like Diablo and the linebacking core with Spillane, etc. Secondary, to me, has got to answer some questions. I do like Nate Hobbs, but he has a lot of injury issues. It's just going to take some time. But I think Wilkins is a big difference maker. And if they can run the ball, if Zamir White can be a power back, then that's going to make Minshew better because you're going to have to respect the run some. But if Minshew has to throw it 48 times a game, he'll make some throws and he'll throw some picks and fumble the ball too.
Is Brock Bowers is one of the tight ends, right?
Yeah, the kid from Georgia.
Yeah, he's hella good.
And Mike Mayers, second-year tight end, Notre Dame, kind of an unsung guy. I think he's really good. So you got those two, and then you got the superstar in Devontae Adams, and you got the expatriate who really had a good season last year, Jacoby Myers. I mean, that's 4 quality guys. They couldn't keep Jacobs because of salary cap issues, but that if you had Jacobs there, man, that's a great group to put around the quarterback. So.
Doesn't Jacoby Myers sounds like a law firm, doesn't it?
Yeah, that or somebody that sells drugs. I don't know.
I know. But I just want to bring back the mystique of Raider Nation, and having these really powerful personalities on the team. I long for those days.
Well, you got one. Max Crosby. He's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
He turned himself into a hell of a player, and he is a hell of a personality, too.
Right on.
I told you the story about him in Eastern Michigan and what he did for his alma mater.
Oh, yeah.
With donating $1 million and then showing up at the press conference and stealing a press conference from everybody and just putting on a great show. And that's a self-developed guy who made himself out of something. He had when he was in college, he had all types of issues with substance abuse and, family issues. And he's become a citizen. He's become a great player. So thumbs up to Mad Max.
He's become a citizen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't say that very often about anything related to the Raiders.
Okay, we got to get some Kaepernick comments
Go
in
ahead.
here. So let's go to this one. This is from Hurtado. He says, Kaepernick is a cancer in the locker room. At 38, he's not a viable option for backup quarterback. If you bring him in as an assistant coach, there are a couple of things that happen. Number one, you run the risk of him spreading his hate and disrupting the locker room. Number two, it's a slap in the face to all the hard-working individuals who have been grinding for that opportunity.
Well, he's not coming as a player. He's been away from it for 7 years. If he had accepted the offer in February, right after Harbaugh got hired, he'd be in here as a consultant or as an intern. He's not going to be the offensive coordinator. But, you may be in grudge mode about the whole flag situation. I was till I found out a lot more about Kaepernick. But at the end of the day, he's an intellect. At the end of the day, he is a leader. And he was a really good player before he got hurt. And the reason his production eroded was he was playing with a shoulder injury. He eventually wound up having surgery. So you have to separate the football issues and how he got hurt from the social issues and what he tried and the statement he tried to make. And everybody hated him early and everybody rallied around him late. And I told John last week one of the most vivid pictures was the end of that season, where by that time everybody had accepted the players had a right and a responsibility to express themselves about social issues, where they stood locked arm in arm, players, all the staffers, the coaches, and Jerry Jones, arm in arm with all the Dallas Cowboy players about social issues. And he created that, and he kind of walked through the fire by himself. So I would think next January, if I'm still doing this podcast and John's not in jail, I think if we're here in January, I bet Kaepernick comes in as some type of offensive assistant coach.
That's interesting to me, to see him as a coach.
Yeah, he and Harbaugh are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it was a ballsy move when Harbaugh benched Alex Smith to make Colin Kaepernick the quarterback. But what this reminds me of is I remember it was like 2 summers ago, I was in St. Louis, and we were there to see a Cubs-Cardinals game, and we were hooking up with some family from Texas, my son and I and a couple other guys. And we were hanging out just before the game talking, and at the time, they were really upset about Team USA, the women's soccer team. They didn't like the way they were disrespecting America, disrespecting the flag. And I was, for me, I don't take it as much of an insult as a lot of other people do. But I think being around people from other parts of America, you understand how passionate they feel in their hate of Colin Kaepernick for this. For me, I thought he was very brave in doing what he did. But for other people, it's persona non grata. There is nothing that can be said to change their mind.
The only thing is I was aghast that he did it. And again, this host comes from an all-military background. I was aghast that somebody would do that to the flag, because the flag is America, the flag is freedom, the flag represents your ability as a great player to make $14 million a year, which is what he was making at that point in time. But obviously, America's got some severe social issues. I was terribly offended. And I remember writing a column about it, as how dare you do this, blah, 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 blah. Anyhow, as the holdout, the lockout, the blackout, whatever you want to call what happened to him occurred, I found out other things that he had done. And I'll just briefly, if you have not heard the podcast, he personally has financed after-school lunch programs in Frisco, in Oakland, and back in Reno, where he played, for inner-city kids every year out of his own pocket. And we all know how tough it is in the inner city in broken homes and families. These kids go to school without a lot. These kids go to school without eating. He's done that. And then I found out he went to Ghana, and he is big on the history of Black America. He went to Ghana, and he wrote a check of his own pocket for $1 million to build the first pediatric hospital in that African dirt-poor country. He did this on his own. So as much as we may condemn him from what he did, the interpretation of the flag, the way this all ended up with how everybody else around the NFL rallied around him, and the way the NFL eventually wound up supporting him, and then what he's done personally, to me it changed my opinion. May not change yours, but, Rudo, I'm just telling you what I discovered about the guy. And to this day, the guy's still doing civic things in those communities where he lives.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to the story than I think most people are getting from the mainstream media. I was going to say something I thought important, but I guess it's not important.
Okay, how about a couple more social media before we cap this?
Okay, this is a comment on the Olympics. I thought this was nice from David Ramos. I agree about the events at the Eiffel Tower. Seeing the cycling and going underneath was amazing. Paris did an amazing job hosting. Yeah,
I've been to Paris. I mean, it was an absolutely phenomenal trip. And then to see the events wrapped around all the historical things of Paris were really, really cool. And, I mean, the biggest thrill to me, I was in the Palace of Versailles on a travel group. I said, this is amazing history that goes back to World War I and even before that. Oh, yeah. And then to see the Olympic marathon run through the gardens and around Palace of Versailles was really, really cool. So, and we got the chance to watch it, and the NBC ratings were phenomenal. And by virtue of all their other network affiliates, they were able to put all the events live on some of the different channels, including Peacock. And then their packaging of the marquee events at 7 o'clock every night for the West Coast fans. I think NBC deserved a gold medal for what they did. And then all the storylines and the athletes and the accomplishments and the disappointments. That was one of the coolest Olympics I think I've ever watched.
I can't think of any other sporting event that has as much cultural impact as the Olympics do. I mean, the Super Bowl does in a weird way, but it's different, because the way they bring in a lot of these investigative reporters and these interesting storylines, and they tie history with sports together. I think it's really cool.
And yet they still have to operate the Olympics with the myriad of political crisis that our country has to deal with. I mean, I've never forgotten Munich in 1972.
That's what I was going to ask you about, yeah.
Yeah, I've never forgotten that, and just mesmerized watching it on TV. And, that was the point of hijackings and kidnappings and things of that nature. And unfortunately, this situation here with Ukraine and Russia, that's front and center. And you've got all the civil unrest in Africa and Haiti and, some of the Central American countries. It's tough, and because it is a truly global sport, but there's some spillover globally. It's what's happening to these athletes in the countries. I mean, the two medal winners from Ukraine who had to flee from their cities because Kiev was getting bombed and their buildings and their houses were destroyed, and trained, and then they went and got gold medals in the Olympics as, quote, refugees. Now they're going back to Kiev. I mean, that's a phenomenal story of accomplishment. And that's part and parcel of what the Olympics can be, because it is a, quote, global sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's just fabulous. Everything about the Olympics is great. Hey, how about we roll the clock back to 1980? And the Olympics were in Moscow. And I remember Jimmy Carter said, we're not sending American athletes. Mm-hmm. Did you agree or disagree with that?
I kind of disagreed with it, only because you have the athlete who trains for 4 years for this event of a lifetime of their career. It's the pinnacle. And they don't get to go. Now, you could say, hey, if they get to go and they get hurt, they don't get to the pinnacle because they got hurt. But so it's a big issue. But there's politics everywhere. And, of course, then we had the Winter Olympics here, and Russia was saying, we're not sending our guys. And, of course, we had Team USA. This is the Lake Placid Olympics. Mm-hmm. Team USA's hockey, they were geared. They built that hockey team to beat the Russians, and suddenly The Russians were saying, we might not send them. Then eventually they relented, and they did send them, and Herb Brooks' team got the gold medal, which is historic. So if you like sports movies, if you like hockey movies, find it, watch it, Miracle. It's the Herb Brooks story about the Team USA and what those guys did. So, but politics, unfortunately, has always been entwined, and drug cheating and what goes on in the Soviet Union, what's gone on in China. And that's why drug testing has been ramped up so much to try to stop the cheaters. But politics are still, it's as big an issue as the actual events are.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember the Munich thing. I was only 7 years old, but I remember, a little bit of that. The thing I was just thinking about Lake Placid, and I remember how they built up that city and the arena was really neat. But then I remember reading one time that I guess they had the Winter Olympics in Squaw. Well, so I'm thinking Squaw Valley in California, didn't they?
Squaw Valley is Idaho, isn't it?
I thought it was near Tahoe.
Might be. On geography's a little gray area there. But yeah, the Squaw Valley, that was back in the 60s, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
And they had the Olympics in Lake Placid, I want to say in 1932 maybe. They had the Winter Olympics there too. But then they built up new venues. I've been to Lake Placid. I've been to that arena, which is kind of cool. It's really old. And I went to the ski lift. I went on the top of the mountains where the actual ski lift is, ski jump. It's really cool looking down into the valley. And you think about ABC and Wide Roller Sports and all that stuff. It's kind of
Where
really
is
neat.
Lake Placid? Is it like near Syracuse or Buffalo?
It's northwest of Albany. You got Syracuse, Albany on the New York State Thruway. Lake Placid is kind of in between both of them. If you had a triangle, Lake Placid would be in the northern Adirondacks.
That's kind of close to your old stomping grounds.
It's close to I worked in Utica, and my cottage is up in the Adirondacks. You do not want to be there unless you're a winter enthusiast after October 15th.
Okay, all good.
All right. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed this long, extended segment of Hacksaw's Headlines. We apologize because I won't shut my mouth and he keeps talking. Hope you've enjoyed all the content because we try to do something really different. We're here Mondays at 1 p.m. with bonus coverage. We're here Thursdays. The podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. We want you to share, tell everybody what we're doing. We want you to subscribe. You'll get all the alerts for the YouTube channel. Check my website, join Hacksaw's Insiders Group, and when we're done and we say goodbye on this podcast, I want you to go right to X, to Twitter, and make sure you become a follower at Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. John, take a deep breath. We'll talk more NFL football, final weekend preseason. We definitely will talk pennant race baseball when we're back here on Thursday.
For sure. And, I just checked on Twitter. You have like 9,800 and something followers. So you're, really close to 10,000.
We're trying to get to 10,000. Push us over the top. Hey, thanks for being part of our podcast. Hope you enjoy the wide variety. Thank you for participating in Fans Forum. Tell a friend. We'll see you come Thursday on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast app.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.